Welcome to the Nurturing Fathers Podcast, a show dedicated to helping men succeed at the most challenging and rewarding job they'll ever have, being a dad. Your hosts are Mark Perlman, the creator and founder of the Nurturing Fathers program, and his son, Corey Perlman, who facilitates the program at the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary and is also a father of 2 young children. It's time to add tools to your Nurturing Fathers toolbox. Mark and Corey, take it away.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Nurturing Fathers podcast. My name is Corey Perlman. I'm along here with my lovable and adorable father, Mark Perlman. What's up, Dad? How you doing?
I like that introduction, by the way. Can I use that?
You can. Anytime you want. It's always good
nice to see you, Corey. And I am delighted to be here with you all and a dear longtime friend, a colleague of mine from the Northwest of the United States. You see, we do draw our interviewees from all over the country because we've got folks about everywhere. Jenn is from the Northwest. She and I have known each other probably going on 15 years. And her name is Jenn Moss. Jenn, you want to say hi and just maybe say a little bit about who you are?
You bet. And thanks so much for inviting me. I am thrilled to be here, Mark and Corey. And yeah, I think we have known each other a long time, even back from the Hawaii days before I moved to Oregon. And right now, let's see, I'm working as a licensed therapist still, and I'm mostly teaching nurturing fathers and nurturing parenting facilitator professional trainings all over the U.S. This is what I get to do full time with my life now. And this it's a dream come true to really, as a single mama, to be able to set my schedule and make a living for the first time ever after many years of juggling young children and clients and cats. Yeah, so this is great. I'm so excited to be here and talk about what we have coming down the pike with online trainings and just kind of what life's like being a businesswoman in the fatherhood world.
Yeah, we'll talk about all the above. In fact, you mentioned being a single parent. And over these years that I've known you, I've watched you as a single parent, have admired how well you seem to do it, but how happy you and the kids seem to be. So what I wanted you to share is maybe some of the challenges of single parenthood, male and female, and maybe some of the tips, if you will, or lessons learned about what makes it work.
Oh boy. So really you want me to tell you about the novel I'm writing? Let's see, where do I start? The first thing that comes to mind is having gone to your first 5-day training when my children were little. My youngest was an infant when I went to your first training, and my oldest was a toddler. They're 2 years apart. And I had been a single mom probably for about 2 years again, because my youngest was my breakup surprise baby, as I like to lovingly call her. And I went to your training and I had all these, intentions to learn about, how to connect with other men and other dads and what I was going to bring back professionally. And what I got out of that was sheer terror at first. At first, I was just a total, complete wreck. I was panicking about how do I raise my kids? How do I change how I'm living as a single woman, as a single mama? How do I give my kids this positive male influence that at that moment in time, they didn't have access to? I wasn't dating anyone. I had been doing what some single parents do, which is not bring men around my children unless, I had known them for years or unless it was my brother. I was also a dance teacher part-time. That's my other passion. When my children were young, I taught ballroom and swing and blues. And I had lots of lovely male dance partners, including many older gentlemen who were, platonic and just had great manners and would talk to me about my life. And after your training, I asked 2 or 3 of these wonderful gentlemen in my life, how would they feel about occasionally, having my children with us when we go out to dinner in a restaurant? How would they feel about playing Scrabble at my house so my kids could see some healthy male-female interaction? And, it just kind of changed my thinking of like, how do my kids get this male influence? How do I raise daughters that I hope God willing, can I do the right things? Can I create opportunities so they won't have as strong male hunger, right? They won't have that father wound as intensely. What can fill the father wound when you don't have access to a daddy? That was the beginning of my journey with you guys.
And as a single parent, one of the things knowing you so well and so long, Jenn, is that you're very committed to living what you know and what you teach others. And I see you as a mom, and as the way you interact with, our crowd but your daughters, you seem happy and generally caring for each other. How do you do that as a mom? As a single mom, can you fill us in a little bit on how that works for you?
Well, that is a question. Again, I have to go back and admit some truths, which is that, when the kids were little, it was not fun for me. It was not easy. It was boring. I mean, nobody tells you that having a baby in your arms for 8 hours or breastfeeding for hours and hours can be, the most boring thing in the world. That, especially, I'll speak for myself, someone with ADHD and a high energy person, I wasn't prepared to slow my life down and be so present to these little humans who they can see right through you, even when they're 2 and 3 years old. They want to be on the floor and they want to play the board game, for 20, 30 minutes. And then they want to play the next one. And even if it's only 3 minutes at a time, they want to play 10 of them. There's no get out of parenting free card if you want to raise conscious children. And I realized that early on. So, I was trained in psychology and therapy, and thank goodness, the Nurturing Parenting program, the Nurturing Fathers program, that really was my lifeline when my children were young. There were days that I'd teach a class or I'd have a client one-on-one, and then I'd go back to my house and, it'd be 10 o'clock at night and my kids would be tantruming or my baby would be teething, and I'd be thinking, what page do I find information on? Where do I start? Where do I begin? I don't know. How do I tell my class tomorrow that I don't know the answers either?
Exactly.
Right? You guys relate? You relate to that, Corey?
Completely relate to that. I'm just as much of a participant in every program I've ever been in as I have been the facilitator. So I completely relate to that.
Yeah. You ever catch yourself teaching and then next thing you know, you're asking them, oh, how do you deal with that?
Absolutely. All the time. And I always tell them that I have to admit, I'm not your teacher. I'm the facilitator. I'm just as much in this as you all are.
And one of the comments we hear from people who facilitate Nurturing Father, including myself, is we learn every time we facilitate a group. There's no question, even in my older years, and always reflecting on what I could have done different. It is such a complex, skilled, and consequential endeavor that I don't think the learning ever stops. It shouldn't really.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And with lots of dads listening in here, we're currently in the environment of COVID-19 and probably will be when this episode launches. From your experience with being in depth in the Nurturing Fathers program and that type of thing, what are some helpful tips, hints, thoughts for dads and moms that are listening out there to connect with their kids when we are with each other day in and day out, 24/7 these days with more time on our hands than we know what to do with?
Oh, yes. Well, and I think this can conclude the question that Mark asked me earlier. Just those little moment-to-moment opportunities to be present. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It can be 5 minutes. It can be sharing a YouTube video. It can be sharing a cool song. It can be saying, just, what do you want? Let's bake something. Let's just stop what we're doing. And, the bananas are black and moldy. Let's make banana bread. We had a really beautiful day in Oregon a few days ago, which doesn't usually happen more than once or twice a week, where the sun comes out and the rain stays away for several hours in a row. And my 13-year-old was jumping on the trampoline. And we are so lucky to have bought her a trampoline last year that she uses all the time. And most of the time, I don't like to jump on it because sometimes I get a little nauseous now that I'm 40-something. But, I watch her and she still does flips and she wants me to watch just like when she was 6. And I've tried to slow down and say, okay, let me watch you do 2 or 3. And the other day I said, I'm coming up. And I got on and I had my slippers on. I had my indoor shoes on and I'm jumping up and down on the trampoline and she's bouncing me so high and we're laughing hysterically. And I don't think I have taken the time to do that in probably 2 years.
Wow. That's powerful. These silver linings, I feel like, in this pandemic that we're in is exactly what you just talked about. The opportunity to slow down a little bit and not regret this extra time that we've had. But
Yes.
to your point, I've done more puzzles, I've watched more movies, and I've had more interesting conversations with my kids than I have, in the last 6 months.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'd say, my biggest piece of advice has just been fake it till you make it. 12 step has taught me a lot along the way. But when the kids were little and I was bored, I would just set a timer for 3 minutes. And if I could just get through 3 minutes of floor time, I knew I was stimulating their brain. I knew I was doing something for them, not for me. And then they got to be toddlers. And if I could just get through a 10-minute board game, even if they threw the pieces or chewed on them, 10 minutes. And then they got older and I thought, okay, if I can just listen to one more knock joke for 15 minutes. And then all of a sudden, somewhere around, for me, it was 8, 9, 10 years old, I realized I wasn't setting timers anymore, that I loved the time we were spending together. And I think we all have different ages that we enjoy the most. And we have some ages we enjoyed the least. Yeah, but my kids are teenagers right now, and it is the best time ever. I'm loving it the most.
That's good to hear, because I'm nervous about those years.
Yeah, I always loved the teenage years too, and actually worked with teenagers by choice. Challenging as they could be, boys and girls. I think I loved being a teenager, part of where it started. It was a wonderful time in my life, and kind of honored and respected what they were going through and the transition they're making in that arc toward maturity or adulthood, the learning curve. So I get a kick out of it. I love the fact that you talk about being present as a parent. It's one of the great things we can do that I don't think is talked about enough, just to be where our kid is at that moment and give them our full attention. I think for every kid, that is a dream come true for a mom or a dad. And one of the things about the real little ones that I learned, which was delightful, is just sort of be there and see where they're going and what they're doing and go along for the ride. Instead of having to try and figure out a way of being with them, just sort of let them take the lead and follow along.
Mm-hmm, absolutely. And I do that now with the older ones too. I just sit down and they might be watching, YouTube, or they might be staring at their phone and FaceTiming 3 other friends. And I just sit down and have my cup of coffee in the middle of it. Ask them, what you eating? I might say, hey, have you eaten already? And they say, yes. And I say, well, I'm going to make some bacon. You want some bacon? Who says no to bacon?
Jenn, talk about that for a second now that you bring that up in terms of technology, because I know a lot of people ask us about that. And I know that Jess and I are concerned about that as our kids get older. But technology, parenting, teenagers, what's your feeling on that?
Ooh, so I don't know if my personal belief is the most popular, but I'm a Generation X kid, and I have had to learn technology to save my life. And at this point, it's here. It's here to stay. And I don't want to spend the next 5 years of raising teenagers power struggling about technology. So if you can't beat them, join them, right? We spend a lot of time sending memes back and forth. I'm always screenshotting things and sending it to them. If they're watching a show, I say, hey, what show are you into? What are you watching? Ooh, I want to watch with you. Put it on the big screen. So I just spend a lot more time trying to join them.
Joining in the fun. That's amazing. And you celebrate it. I think you and I are connected on Facebook. I'm sure we are. But you always seem to be celebrating with some sense of delight of where your kids are at. And what a sweet parenting thing to do. I mean, how good that must make them feel. But I'm sure it makes you feel really good as well. I actually thought the question you were going to ask was about bacon, Corey. Not
That was my follow-up question.
That was your follow-up question.
I'll share with you my recipes electronically.
Do you feel the need, Jenn, in terms of technology, to put some boundaries or cautions around it? Do you feel that there are risks? I haven't parented in that framework, but you both have.
Oh, of course. I mean, I do have like Life 360 on their cell phones, so I know where they are, if they're with friends or they tell me they're going to the mall, I can see geographically if they're at the mall. I bought an app called The Circle. I think it's made by Disney. And I actually had to buy a whole new modem. It took me a few months to save up for a new modem because I wasn't prepared for that expense. And the modem works a little slower than the one we had before, but it gives me the ability to freeze their phone at any given time. I can pause one program or I can pause all the programs.
Yeah.
So I can just pause YouTube or I can just pause text messaging. And I have had to, threaten to pause the phone if chores don't get done. I have paused the phone until homework gets done. I've paused every program except music because my teenagers swear up and down they need music in the background.
It's so cool that you can do that, though. It's so flexible. It's funny you said that because like a couple nights ago, I'm trying to get to my Facebook and I can't get on. And I'm like, what is going on with our, and just turn me off. So
you guys in circle? Yeah, it's great. It's the best I've found so far.
Yes.
Well, it's great
that you have to buy a modem that is adaptable with it. That's the only annoying thing.
It's wonderful because you found a way to be an active parent within that framework. Some parents, I think, feel they're giving away any kind of observation or boundaries when their kids have that digital device. But there's a happy medium. You can stay involved, which I guess
I think there is. And again, I don't know if this is a popular opinion or not, but when we were kids, we were told that sitcoms were going to rot our brain and reduce our IQ by X amount of points. And, I'm still a creative, intelligent woman, so I don't think watching episodes of Full House or Cheers destroyed me. But, we don't know how the children of today, how their brains are going to accommodate or adapt to the learning and the technical integrations that are happening now. So I'm trying to err on the side of positivity. I'm trying to find that happy medium, which doesn't replace being present. But again, during this time of COVID-19, how many of us have had to do video chat, FaceTime chat, Zoom chat? And it feels pretty real and pretty connected still. At least for me, it does.
Jenn, talk about teaching the Nurturing Fathers program, being involved in that for so long. Talk about some of the dads that you remember, obviously not by names, but just things that bubble to the surface of just some anecdotal kind of stories or memories that you have with some of the dads that have come through your classes and some things that you remember from that, powerful memories and such.
One of my very first clients when I opened up private practice on the island of Maui was a gentleman who was true blood Hawaiian and very proud of it. And he was over 7 feet tall. I'm not kidding you. And those of you who know me, I'm 5 feet tall. So it was an interesting dynamic. And he was very polite, but very proud of his heritage. It wasn't super trusting of a professional being in his life. He was encouraged to see me because his lawyer told him to. And his child was being raised in another state. And so we were working together to work on a parenting plan for if he was to get visitation across state lines quarterly. And how do you create maybe not quantity parenting, but quality parenting when you only see your child a couple times a year? And how do you create this intimacy, this presence in your child's life when it's mostly long distance? Yeah. So we spent a year working together, working through the Nurturing Fathers workbook, working through this idea of, what is a man? What is the role of masculinity? When you meet a woman, what do you think about the role of wife or partner? And he had a daughter. So, how do fathers parent daughters? And what do you want your daughter to see in a dad? And how close are you to that version of dad? And we really worked on that vision for about a year. And I was blessed to actually travel with him by airplane with the court's permission. The court sanctioned his first visit with his daughter. I think she was 5 or 4 by the time we got to see her, and he hadn't seen her in 2 years. And we traveled to another state, stayed in separate hotel rooms, but shared the plane ride. And I got to be the supervisor for his first visit with his daughter after all that time. This wasn't one of my clients per se, but one of my most memorable Nurturing Fathers professional trainings was about 3 or 4 years ago. An agency in Oregon, they sent their entire staff. I think it was, I don't want to say 7 or 8 staff, about 4 professionals that worked direct service with clients and about 4 of their administrative staff. I mean, they sent their intake worker, they sent their bus driver, they sent their childcare providers. And I had the whole crew of them. About half were men and half were women. And it was a big training. I think we had 15, 20 people. And about half the training was this whole agency. And long story short, at the end of, the first 2 days when we talked about the fatherhood vision. And I just remember the man who drove the bus stood up and he said that this training has changed not only his life, not only who he is as a father and a grandfather. And he said it was me, but I know it wasn't me. And I know it's not Mark or you, but it was the program, like the way the material is packaged together. If guys do the work, if anybody does the work, it changes something inside you. And I felt like that. And this man stood up and he said, you have touched about 7 generations of men in my family over the last 2 days. He said, not only does this change my life and my adult son's life and my grandchild's life, but his grandchildren and his children and his children to come. He said, all of that is now changed. He's like, and I'm just the bus driver.
That's powerful. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's powerful.
That one stays with me.
Oh yeah.
And I found out little update, right? Late breaking news. I ran into a colleague who knew this person about a year ago, and they said, "Oh yeah, he still drives the bus, but within the first year, he was so excited. He went back and he said, I want to be a facilitator. I'm trained. Give me a class."
Oh, wow.
And he not only drives the bus, but he also facilitates Nurturing Fathers classes now too.
You planted the seed, man. That's amazing.
Maybe asking the question why you do this work, but you just answered it. Those experiences that really light us up and make us continue on.
Powerful.
Yeah,
so we're kind of, close to the end here, Jenn, but I want to, 2 things. I want to ask you a question, then also give you some space just to share anything that you want to share. If you've shared, what you have, that's great. But we had just interviewed a little while ago, and one of our upcoming episodes will be Carol Lappin, who also does the Nurturing Fathers program. And, tell us a little bit about, your experience as a woman from that perspective, teaching this course. Dad had mentioned that for a while, people were asking Dad, should a woman be able to train this program? And it's been proven the answer is absolutely yes. So talk about your experience a little bit with that, and then just anything else you'd like to share.
Great. Oh, yeah. So I remember those days when I first was welcomed into the fold. That was still kind of the punchline was, hey, you can be here and you can go back and try to educate other women on the importance of men being in their children's lives. But you try to work with men. You don't do it yourself. And luckily, within a year or two, that shift happened. But I've always been very aware of being respectful of the fact that I'm working with guys and I'm talking to them about their life, their fathering, their feelings. I'm not a dude. And so, I never want to assume that role or assume I know what any man's experience is. So for me, I haven't had any issues with people signing up for my trainings. Every once in a while, someone says, I really would like a male speaker. And I say, great. I said, let's send you to one. I understand. I'm not here to convince anybody, but those that want to come, please come. I have, equally men and women that get trained. I've worked with guys direct service who really appreciate that I don't try to convince them about the woman's experience, right? If I'm working with a guy, it's not about, oh, what's your ex-wife going through? I'm here for them. I'm here for their experience. Mm-hmm. And the byproduct of this is that I have been able to, I don't want to say convince, but I've been able to talk with women along the way about how to maybe hold back a little more and give men the space to let their strengths show, because it's hard for the average husband or dad in a relationship to be praised and be given the space to be amazing if there is a woman in their life who firmly believes that, that maybe the mom's way is the best way and any other way is okay, but not the best. So I've tried to do a lot of re-educating around the fact that there's no best way, right? Many men and many women, not all, but many do things differently and equally awesome.
Beautiful message. I think maybe that's a good place to sort of stop. I don't know if we could top that. Jenn, it's always delightful to see you, always delightful to talk with you. Thanks for sharing yourself with this audience. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much. I love any opportunity to spend time with you and Corey. And I'm excited for the next mountain I'm going to climb, which is online trainings. Woo! Ooh, stay tuned.
Tell us about that and tell people how they can connect with you and just, a little bit more about what you're currently doing with that before we wrap up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Well, the best way is just my email, which is jmoss, MFT, like marriage, family, therapist, at gmail.com. You can find me on Facebook. You can find me by email. And my next Nurturing Fathers Marriage and Parenting training will be May 11th to the 13th. And I'm not sure when this is airing, if it's before or after. But then I think I'll be having an in-person one that was scheduled in June. And so if the world turns back on again, Oregon will have one in June. And if the world isn't turned back on again, we may push it to July.
Wonderful. Thank you again. Hope your family and you stay healthy and happy.
Absolutely. We're busy with kitty cats, and I went and bought chickens and ducks during COVID-19 so that we could take care of ourselves and eat eggs.
Keep showing us those videos, man. I was like mesmerized by you guys feeding the chickens. I was just like,
that was great. That was great.
Thank you, Jenn, so much. As always, everybody, this episode will be on all podcasting channels. We'll promote it on our Facebook page, Nurturing Fathers, facebook.com/Nurturing Fathers. And Jenn's trainings, we'll make sure to get them up on the Nurturing Fathers website as well. So if you need a place to find them, and we'll also promote them on the pages so everybody has a chance to see this, whether or not this episode airs before that May date. So thank you both so much. Mark, Jenn, we love you. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks, Corey. Thanks, Jenn.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to the Nurturing Fathers podcast. Have questions or comments? Join the conversation at facebook.com/Nurturing Fathers or email us at nurturingfathers@gmail.com.